Another, not me but my dad one. From a few years ago. I know this'll be buried, but whatever. My dad, late 70s, has been on POF for years. He has his profile set up to only accept messages from women 60 plus, a standard feature of theirs. One day he's contacted a profile claiming to be over 80, but with a suspiciously young-looking and heavily filtered headshot. She initiated a chat with him. I later acquired screenshots to prove this. He immediately asked her about the picture mismatch, and she told him, "Oh yeah, I'm actually 23, but my friend created this account for me with a wrong birth date, and it won't let me change it now." My dad told her he wasn't necessarily interested in seeing a 23-year-old, but would be willing to shoot the shit. During the conversation, she worked in that she was on hard times after having moved several states to escape an abusive ex, blah blah, and her car was currently out of commission, so she could really use a ride to the cell phone store to sort out something on her account. He told her though he lives over an hour away, he's occasionally in her neighborhood for a call, and would be happy to do so if when. About a week later, he got a call in that area, so he messaged her. The slippery sloping intensified from here. To preface, I'm most frustrated that he was so oblivious to the scam. She hopped in his car and told him he'd be taking her to the mall. Well, okay. Once there, she proceeded to hot-foot it into Victoria's Secret. Sure thing. She grabbed a cloth shopping bag and overflowed it with expensive items. Then she went to check out $500 of merch and realized that she'd forgotten her wallet at home, which had her cash in it. Somehow she conned my dad into opening a new Victoria's charge account in his name. This apparently didn't raise any red flags to the clerks attending to this transaction, with promises of paying him back in cash once he dropped her back at home. They drove back to her house, and she headed inside saying she'd be right back with the money. After a half hour, he got out of his truck and knocked on her door, and she answered crossly saying, "What are you still doing here?" He went away, but a few days later he was back in the area and knocked on her door again. This time, he told her he would need the cash or the merchandise back, or he would be calling the cops. Right at this moment, there were some neighbors arriving home right across the street, so she yelled at the top of her lungs for him to get his hands off her, pushed him backwards onto her steps, breaking a rib, yelling for them to call the cops, and disappearing inside her house. He waited the 15 or 20 minutes it took a cop car, accompanied by a paramedic unit, to respond, believing he'd be able to tell the cops what actually happened and clear things up. When she re-emerged from her house to greet the cops, somehow she now had small scratches on her neck, and she told the cops that this 200-pound man had thrown her to the ground and strangled her when she refused to give back gifts he'd bought her on a first date. Despite her claims of assault, the paramedics left the scene without so much as personally examining her, and the cops arrested my dad, already having decided that he was guilty, and on the way to the police station, apparently alerted every news outlet in the country. I found out a few days later when my sister-in-law, who lives halfway across the country from me, saw his mugshot on Yahoo News randomly under a headline along the lines of 7*year-old arrested for strangling 23-year-old after first date. I worked with him to acquire screenshots of the remnants of their conversation on POF after she'd deleted her account, as well as a Google cache of her profile that she'd attempted to delete, and provided them to a highly rated criminal defense lawyer in that jurisdiction. All of the evidence I've been able to piece together supports his version of events, more or less. Epilogue. The prosecution decided not to proceed with their case against him as the victim told them that she would not appear in court to testify against him unless they paid her. That's right. Also, about 6 months later we stumbled on a new POF profile with her same profile picture, a different username, and a different but similarly wrong age, as well as similar sugar daddy baiting profile language, claiming to be in another city about 50 miles away. I assume she moves up and down the East Coast squatting at the houses of acquaintances pulling the same scam on a long string of gullible older men, but didn't count on one of them actually calling her on her scam. Back in the early 90s, when blind dates were arranged by friends instead of algorithms, and you couldn't quietly Google someone beforehand, my buddies decided I'd been single too long, which, in their opinion, meant more than 3 weeks. One weekend, a friend comes up to me and says, "Hey, my cousin's in town. You'd like her? I set you two up for dinner on Saturday." That was it. No photos. No profile. No details beyond, "She's cute, you'll be fine," and some vague mention of her being a cousin or family friend. I honestly can't remember that part now. All I knew was, Saturday restaurant, blind date. I showed up a few minutes early to this mid-range place. White tablecloths, dim lighting, generic jazz playing softly in the background. It was classy enough to look like I was trying, but not so fancy that I'd be broke if it went badly. She walked in right on time. She was pretty. Not knock you dead, not intimidating, just normal, nice looking. She smiled, we shook hands, did the awkward, oh hey, you're real small talk. So far, so good. The hostess came over and asked, table for two? Before I could answer, my date jumped in. Yes, she said, but can we sit at that table over there? She pointed to a very specific spot, one of those two-person tables along the wall, with a direct line of sight to the bar area. I didn't think much of it. Maybe she didn't like sitting in the middle of the room. Maybe she wanted to avoid drafts. People are particular. I'm not exactly picky about chairs, so I shrugged. Sure, that's fine. We sat down, me with my back partly to the bar, her squarely facing it. Menus open, polite conversation begins. At first, it was just your standard blind date script, where we worked, how we knew the mutual friends, what we liked to do for fun. The conversation wasn't amazing, but it wasn't awful either. Just SOSO. Enough to keep things moving. But every now and then, I'd catch something odd. She'd suddenly make this brief facial expression that didn't match the conversation, like a quick eyebrow raise, or a scrunched nose, or a tight little smirk. Sometimes she'd adjust her hair in this exaggerated way, or touch her neck, or tilt her head almost theatrically. The first couple of times I thought, okay, maybe she's just expressive. But it kept happening. Her eyes would flick past me for a second, toward the bar behind me, then she'd make a face. I'd turn around casually and see nothing unusual. A few people drinking, a bartender polishing glasses. Nothing that screamed secret code. She also kept going to the restroom. Once, no big deal. Twice, maybe she'd had a lot of water. 3 times midway through dinner. Now I was suspicious, not full-on paranoid, just curious. On my way back from my own bathroom trip, I finally noticed something. From the angle where I was walking, I could see our table and the bar clearly. My date was seated facing the bar, like I said, and directly across from her, on the other side of the bar area, was a woman sitting alone. Facing us, or more specifically, facing her. The woman was nursing a drink, looking casually in our direction. Not staring intensely, just oriented perfectly like someone watching a stage from the audience. I tucked that away in my mind. On the way back to the table, I thought, okay, maybe it's a coincidence. Maybe it's just where the hostess put her. Don't be weird. I sat down. My date smiled, asked some question about my job, and for a bit, I forgot about the woman. Then the facial expression started up again, tiny, deliberate, almost rhythmic. Her eyes flicked behind me, and I had the uncomfortable feeling that something was happening over my shoulder that I wasn't in on. But I let it go. The food was decent, the evening wasn't a complete disaster, and honestly, I was curious enough to see where this would go. After dinner, she suggested we grab a drink somewhere else. What could possibly go wrong, right? We went to a nearby bar, the kind with high-top tables clustered around the bar counter, music a little too loud, and neon beer signs throwing weird colors on everything. We grab one of those high-top tables. Again, I'm mid-room, and again, she sits so she's facing the bar directly. And then the weirdness ramps up. The facial expressions and little hand gestures start almost immediately. Except this time, they're more obvious, like she's forgotten to tone it down now that we're on round 2 of the evening. A little eyebrow dance here, a subtle wave of her fingers, a quick tilt of her head to the left. Her eyes flick past me, again and again. I'm thinking, okay, I'm not crazy. She's definitely signaling someone. A few minutes later, she excuses herself to go to the restroom. I watch her walk away this time, because I'm done pretending not to notice. As she nears the back, another woman stands up from the bar and casually falls in step with her. No conversation, no obvious greeting, they just sort of merge. And then they both go into the restroom together. I lean sideways in my chair to get a better look. The woman who followed her in, same lady from the restaurant. When they come back out, they split again. My date walks back to me. The woman veers off to a bar stool, sits down, and resumes position, facing us. Now my something is up meter is at maximum. I pretend to be interested in my drink, but I'm watching everything like a hawk now. The expressions, the timing, the little hand movements under the table. It's not random. It's not fidgeting. It's communication. Finally, after another round of this nonsense, I can't take it anymore. I lean in slightly and say, okay, I have to ask, who is that lady you keep making faces at? She freezes for a second, like a kid caught with a cheat sheet during a test. Then she sighs. "That's my mother," she says. I blink. "Your mother?" She nods like this is no big deal. "Yeah, she always comes along on my dates." I just stare at her, waiting for the punchline. It doesn't come. "She always a what?" "Tags along," she explains. "Not like with us." She just sits nearby. Once we've had a few dates and you get to know her, it won't be so awkward. She really wants me to settle down and have kids, so she likes to make sure any future son-in-law meets her standards. She says this like she's explaining a quirky family tradition, not revealing that her mother is literally spying on us from 10 feet away. I look over at the bar. Mom is pretending not to look, swirling her drink, glancing over every few seconds. I look back at my date. "So," I say slowly, "she's been at the restaurant, and now here, watching us the entire time, while you signal her?" She shrugs. "It's just easier this way." She gets anxious if she's not involved. "Once you and I go out a few more times, you'll get used to it." There's a strange, hovering moment where I realize she absolutely expects this to continue. I can see the road stretching out in front of me. Second date with Mom at the next table. Third date, same deal. Engagement someday with Mom hiding in the bushes with binoculars. I pick up my drink. I set it down. I look her dead in the eye. Then I raise my hand. "Waiter." I call. "Check, please." I paid the tab. I wished her a polite good night, got up, and walked out before her mother could grade my exit. My friends asked later how the date went. Obviously, I swiped right. She was gorgeous. Look, in my defense, she was really attractive. Messy dark hair, eyeliner that looked like she'd applied it at a red light, nose ring, and this lazy half-smile in every photo like she was either exhausted or secretly laughing at everyone. She looked like the human embodiment of a 2 a.m. text. Our chats were, actually, decent. She was funny in a very dry, self-aware way. Lots of jokes about being mentally ill but hot. A frankly alarming number of memes about not wanting to exist, plus occasional genuinely interesting comments about the research she was doing for her biology degree. She mentioned she was a senior, hated her major, hated her hometown more, and was just trying to survive the semester without lighting anything on fire. I told myself she was just being edgy. People meme about their depression all the time. Reader, it was exactly as bad as it sounded. We decided to meet up for tea at this local hipster place downtown. She was already there when I walked in, curled up in the corner of a faded green armchair, hands wrapped around a giant mug. In person, she was exactly her pictures, maybe even a bit prettier, in that I haven't slept properly in 3 days way. Big tired eyes, chipped black nail polish, an oversized sweater that kept slipping off one shoulder. "Hey," I said, awkwardly waving. She looked up, smiled crookedly. "You came," she said. "Good. My disaster marketing is apparently ineffective." I laughed, because what else do you do? "Well, yeah. I figured if you're calling yourself a disaster, you're either self-aware or dramatically underselling yourself." "Oh no," she said, sipping her tea. "I'm definitely that bad." We ordered drinks and sat down. She immediately spiraled into talking about how tired she was, not like, "wow, long day," but like, "I fundamentally do not want to be here," said with a little laugh. "I'm obviously depressed," she said, completely casually. Like clinically, not in a cute Tumblr way. She started telling me about her brain like it was a roommate she hated. "There's this version of me," she said, stirring her tea with unnecessary aggression. "Hyper-competent me. She shows up like once every couple of weeks. Does all my assignments, cleans my room, responds to emails, makes appointments, schedules my life. Then she disappears again, and you're left with this." She waved her hand at herself. "Disaster you?" I said. "Exactly," she nodded. "You're meeting disaster me. Hyper-competent me is probably somewhere color-coding a calendar in my head and judging us." I laughed, but there was this gnawing feeling in the back of my mind that she was being more literal than I wanted to think about. Then she told me her life plan. "You know what I really want to do," she said. "Like genuinely?" "Please don't say crime," I said. She snorted. "No. I want to move somewhere a few states away after graduation, cut off my family, and work at a gas station." I blinked. "You're a senior bio major. You could do research. Go to grad school. Work in a lab. Why a gas station?" She took a long sip of tea and stared at something over my shoulder. "No expectations," she said. "No pressure to be something. Just clock in, sell cigarettes and coffee, go home, repeat. People think that sounds sad, but it sounds peaceful to me. There was a part of me that got it. Another part was screaming internally, run. The date itself wasn't awful, though. She was smart and interesting underneath the chaos, and we had some genuinely good conversation. We joked about professors, weird customers, terrible group projects. She asked me thoughtful questions, then apologized whenever she thought she'd talked about herself too much. By the end of the date, I was thinking, okay, she's a lot, but maybe this could be something casual. Or at least a story. Then everything escalated. We were standing up, getting ready to leave, when her eyes suddenly went huge. "Oh shit," she blurted. "My backpack." "What about it?" I asked. "I left it in my last class," she said. "I came straight here. My laptop is in there. And my notes. And my meds. And I have an exam next week. Oh my God, I'm so stupid." She started breathing faster, like she was about to spiral into a full panic attack. I tried to calm her down. "Can you get it tomorrow?" I asked. She shook her head quickly. "No, the building's going to be locked, and I need my meds tonight, and I don't have my car because my mom dropped me off for class and then went home." "Home where?" I asked. "In the suburbs," she said. "Like 30 minutes away. There's no bus that runs that late." I hesitated. I absolutely hesitated. You could practically see the fork in the road in front of me. Be logical and leave, or be a decent person and ruin your evening. "Okay," I said. "I'll drive you back to campus to get it." Her shoulders dropped in relief. "Thank you," she said, looking like she might cry. "Seriously, thank you." So we go. We drive back. The building's still open. We retrieve the backpack from the lecture hall. I feel like I've just completed a side quest in a very strange video game. In the parking lot, I'm thinking we'll say goodbye. Maybe I'll get a hug. Maybe we should do this again. Instead, she turns to me, clutching her backpack straps. She says, "Can I ask you one more favor?" I brace myself. "Sure." "Can you drive me to my parents' house?" she asks. "Please? There's really no bus at this hour, and my mom's not picking up, and I don't want to be stranded." At this point it's late, I'm tired, but I can already see her panicking again. So of course I say yes. We start driving out toward the suburbs, long dark roads, occasional gas stations, those weird stretches where there's nothing but trees and bad decisions. And that's when she decides to start oversharing. "So," she says very casually, like we're talking about weather, "I should probably tell you. I have a boyfriend." I stare at the road. "Oh, cool. Yeah, that's cool. He doesn't know about this," she adds. "He thinks I'm studying." "Of course he does," I mutter. She laughs softly. "Sometimes I just like to see what's out there, you know. That's what this was. Just me seeing what's out there." "So this date," I say, "is market research?" "Kind of," she says. "Also, I think I'm pretty much a lesbian, but I like the power trip of getting a guy to like me." I take a second to process that. "So, you have a boyfriend. You're probably a lesbian, but you go on dates with guys to see if you can get them into you." She nods thoughtfully. "Yeah, that's accurate." I laugh. I can't help it. It's either that or have a midlife crisis on the highway. "You know," I say, "your bio really was honest. You are a disaster." "I warned you," she says. "You won't like me." We finally pull up outside her parents' house. Quiet street, cookie-cutter lawn, the whole suburban starter pack. She unbuckles, grabs her backpack, and pauses with the door half open. "Thanks for everything," she says. "You're really sweet." "Yeah," I say. "That's my problem." She gives me one last half smile, disappears inside, and that's it. No hug. No, let's do this again. Just a chaotic drive and a story I tell when someone asks, "So how bad can online dating really be?" For some reason, we never saw each other again. I can't imagine why. We were sitting in a Randy's Donuts off some highway in Wisconsin. It was a late afternoon. Snow was piled up in gray, half-frozen mounds in the parking lot, and the glass doors kept fogging up every time someone walked in. The whole place smelled like sugar, fryer oil, and burned coffee. I was halfway through a maple Long John, minding my own business, when she dropped it on me. "Hey," she said, picking at the sprinkles on her donut. "Can you do me a favor this weekend?" We'd been seeing each other for maybe 2-3 weeks. Nothing serious on paper, but we'd fallen into that soft, easy rhythm where you start assuming there might be a future. Regular texts, half-asleep FaceTimes, her leaving a hoodie at my place by accident. That kind of thing. I licked sugar off my thumb. "Depends what the favor is," I said. "You moving? Burying a body? Helping you assemble IKEA furniture? That last one is a deal breaker. She smirked, then looked down at her donut like it had suddenly become interesting. No, nothing like that. I just have this funeral. The word funeral doesn't usually pair well with donuts, but okay. Oh, I said. Someone close? She shrugged, this weird tight little motion. Kind of. Yeah. It's complicated. I waited for the explanation. It didn't come. I don't really want to go alone, she said. Would you come with me? Just as support? She glanced up at me through those stupidly long lashes. It felt like one of those moments where you get to either be the good guy or the dude who says no to a grieving girl in a donut shop. Yeah, I said before my common sense could jump in. Of course. I'll go with you. She relaxed a little, like she'd been holding her breath. Thank you, she said softly. It's on Sunday. I'll pick you up. I took another bite of my Long John, trying to imagine what complicated meant in funeral terms. Ex? Estranged relative? Former roommate who never did the dishes? I definitely did not put dead fiancé on the list. Sunday showed up cold and gray. She arrived in a black dress and a big coat, makeup done but eyes kind of dull, like she hadn't slept properly. I wore a suit that still smelled faintly like the wedding I'd last worn it to. She didn't say much on the drive, just kept one hand on the wheel and the other squeezed tight around a crumpled tissue. The funeral home was packed. The sort of crowded where people are standing at the back and in the aisles, all in black, all murmuring quietly. As soon as we walked in, I felt the air shift. Heads turned. Conversations dipped. There was this ripple. I told myself I was imagining it. She held onto my arm, leaning into me like she needed the contact to keep standing. I put my hand over hers. People stared at that too. We found seats near the middle. A lady in the row ahead of us turned around and gave me a look that could have curdled milk. I tried for a polite smile. It died on my face before it even fully formed. At the front of the room, there was a big framed photo of a guy. Late 20s, maybe early 30s. Nice smile, suit, one of those LinkedIn but slightly fun headshots. Who's that? I whispered, leaning toward her. She swallowed. That's him, she said. Him who? She stared straight ahead. Ethan. The name meant nothing to me. The way she said it absolutely did. The service started. Someone got up to speak. I didn't hear most of it, because I was too busy trying to stop my brain from building a conspiracy wall with red string. My brother Ethan. He loved deeply. He was so excited to be getting married next year. Married. The word slid into my skull like a knife made of ice. I turned my head slowly. Her shoulders were shaking. Tears were running down her face. She squeezed my hand under the armrest so tight it hurt. Are you okay? I whispered. She nodded, but the nod was lying. On the stage, Ethan's sister kept talking. And to his beautiful fiancée, Emily. Everyone's heads pivoted like they were on strings toward her. Toward the woman clutching my hand. Toward the girl I'd been kissing in my car and texting goodnight and bringing donuts to just a few days ago. Beautiful fiancée. I felt the blood drain from my face. My stomach dropped, like that sensation when an elevator starts moving before you're ready. I don't know if you've ever felt two timelines collide in your head, but that's exactly what it was. Every kiss. Every I'm busy tonight. Every I can't talk, I'm with family. Every time she'd turned her phone face down. Beside me, she was crying hard now. Not soft, polite tears. Full body sobs. People in the pew across from us glared at me, like I was the one who'd killed him. One older guy shook his head in disgust, eyes stuck on where our hands were joined. And I realized, they all knew who I was. Not me personally, but the role. The extra. The secret. The quiet scandal tucked in the back pew in a too-new suit holding the grieving bride-to-be's hand. I was the side piece at the dead fiancé's funeral. I felt my skin burn. I let go of her hand. She glanced at me, eyes wide, as if she'd just remembered I existed outside her grief. Please don't go, she mouthed. But my body was already ahead of my brain. I muttered something that might have been, I'm sorry, and slipped out of the row, trying not to step on anyone's feet. I could feel the weight of everyone's stares on my back, like laser sights. I walked down the aisle past his photo, past the flowers, past his crying mother. I kept my eyes anywhere but their faces. The hallway outside felt too bright, too quiet. I pushed through the doors into the cold air, my breath fogging up as soon as it hit the wind. I didn't run, but I walked fast. Back in my JC days, when I still thought Axe body spray was a personality and dates were automatically romantic if there was a textbook nearby, I got invited over for what she called a study date. This girl was in a couple of my classes, smart, funny, a little chaotic in that always almost late, but somehow still pulled together way. We'd been flirting in that awkward teenage fashion where you pretend to borrow notes you don't need and laugh a bit too hard at jokes that aren't that good. So when she said, "You should come over and we can study for the test," my brain went, wow, she's serious about school and not, this might be code for something else. Already, you can see the problem. I show up at her place in the late afternoon, backpack slung over my shoulder, trying to look casual and not like I'd changed shirts 3 times before leaving the house. She opens the door and looks cute in that regular, effortless way, hair in a loose bun, big t-shirt, shorts. She smiles, lets me in, and the first thing I see? Her dad. He's in the kitchen, right by the table, sorting through some bills. Older guy, a little heavy-set, glasses, looks like he owns at least 2 pairs of dad jeans. He turns, smiles, and says, "You must be your name. You guys are studying here." I glance at her, expecting her to whisk me away to her room, or the living room, or literally anywhere else. "Yeah, we're gonna be at the table," she says, totally casual. So there we are, me, her, and her dad 10 feet away. We sit at the kitchen table, textbooks and notebooks spread out like we're about to film an after-school special. Her dad makes small talk as he moves around the kitchen, offers me water, asks what subjects we're doing, cracks a dad joke or 2. He actually seems pretty cool. Chill. Not hovering, not glaring, just there. Close enough that I could probably hit him with a pencil if I threw it. And I'm thinking, okay, this is clearly a real study date. Respectable. Responsible. Look at me, a man of culture. We do actually study for about 5 minutes. Then we start talking. About teachers, dumb classmates, random stuff from school. She laughs a lot, keeps brushing her hair behind her ear in that way girls do when they're either flirting or just have annoying hair. I can't tell. I just know I'm more focused on her mouth than on my notes. Every now and then she gets up from the table and says something like, "Oh, I forgot my highlighters," or "I need my calculator," and disappears down the hallway to her bedroom. She does this a few times. Each time, I stay exactly where I am. At the table, with my book open, like a good, respectful, oblivious idiot. At one point her dad says, "You guys want anything from 7 to 11? I'm heading there for smokes." I say, "Yeah, sure, I'll come," thinking this is my chance to show I'm helpful or something. He waves me off. "Nah, stay. Study. I'll grab you both something." So he leaves. I'm alone in the house with her. She disappears to her room again, calling over her shoulder, "Be right back, I swear I'm so disorganized." I sip my water and scroll through my notes. She comes back, sits down, and we keep talking. She leans in a bit sometimes, laughs, touches my arm once or twice. I register it as, wow, we're really getting along. Not, this is go time, champ. The night goes like that. Talking, fake studying, her running to her room, her dad floating in and out of the kitchen. At one point, he puts on the TV in the adjacent living room, still fully within earshot. The atmosphere is not exactly romantic. Eventually it gets late enough that I feel like I should head out. We walk to the door. She smiles and says she had fun. I smile and say I did too. I go home feeling quietly proud of myself, thinking nice. That went well. We vibed. We'll definitely see each other again. On the way out, I even think vaguely, if she wanted anything to happen, she probably would have done something obvious. Her dad was right there, after all. Fast forward a few days. We've texted a bit since the study date. Nothing intense, just normal chatting. So I figure, alright, time to level up. I text her, "Hey, what's your weekend looking like? Want to grab dinner and catch a movie?" A little while later she replies, I don't think it's going to work. I want someone more forceful." I read it 3 times. More forceful? I stare at my phone like it's personally offended me. I ask her what she means, because I honestly don't get it. She takes a moment, then drops it. Like the other day when I kept going to my bedroom. That was me hinting you were supposed to follow me. I wanted you to be more assertive. You didn't get it. I just sit there, phone in my hand, mentally replaying the entire evening like a security tape. Her dad 10 feet away. Her running down the hallway. Me at the kitchen table, highlighting like a responsible citizen. And in her head, that was my cue to what? Sneak off, follow her to her bedroom, and just pounce? In her parents' house? With her dad in the next room? On a first date, where we literally called it a study session? My brain short-circuited between am I that oblivious? And that sounds like a great way to get killed. I tried to explain my perspective. I didn't want to disrespect you or your dad. I wasn't sure if that was okay, and I didn't want to push boundaries. She basically said, in nicer words, that if I didn't take initiative, I wasn't what she was looking for. She wanted someone who'd read those hints and act on them. We stopped talking after that. No fight, no drama, just a quiet mutual fade out. Years later, telling the story, I can laugh about it. Back then, I mostly just felt confused and a little insulted. Like sorry I didn't interpret, forgot my pen, going to my bedroom, as please come chase me down the hallway and risk my dad walking in on us. My husband, when I told him, snorted and said, so she wanted a boyfriend and a burglar. Looking back, I don't even feel bad about missing the signal. If anything, I'm glad teenage me didn't try to be that forceful guy she thought she wanted. That's how you end up in awkward, non-consensual situations with angry parents and police reports. I was just some shy JC kid, trying to pass my classes and not screw up too badly. I thought a study date was a study date, that a girl repeatedly disappearing to her room was exactly what she said it was, getting stuff she forgot. Apparently for her, it was all capital H hints. I was driving around my hometown with my husband when I told him this story. We'd already passed my old high school, the park where I failed spectacularly at learning to skateboard, and the crappy strip mall where everyone used to hang out for no reason. We turned down a street I hadn't been on in years, and there on the corner was the bus stop. The bus stop. I started laughing. What? My husband asked, glancing over. That, I said, pointing. That's where my teenage crush almost kissed me, and then projectile vomited between his legs. My husband nearly swerved. I'm sorry, what? So I told him. Back when I was a teenager, that bus stop was basically my second home. I used it to get to school, to my crappy part-time job, to my friends' houses. It was a simple metal bench with a scratched-up plastic roof, and always smelled faintly like wet leaves, cigarette smoke, and teenage regret. There was this guy I'd see across the street sometimes. He'd stand near the corner, half in the shade of a sad-looking tree, headphones on, hood up. Tall, thin, messy dark hair. The kind of cute where you pretend you're not looking at him, while absolutely staring in reflections. We never spoke. I'd be on my side of the street, he'd be on his. Sometimes we'd accidentally make eye contact, and I'd look away so fast you'd think my neck had a motor in it. But I noticed him, and apparently he noticed me. Fast forward a couple of years. I'm at a friend's backyard barbecue. One of those thrown-together teenage parties where someone's parents are out of town. Everyone brought bags of chips and a suspiciously cheap bottle of vodka, and the grill is manned by a guy who definitely doesn't know how to cook burgers but absolutely insists he does. I'm wandering around, saying hi to people I halfway recognize when I see him. Bus stop guy. He's leaning against the side of the house, red plastic cup in hand, talking to some mutual friends. Without the distance of the street between us, he's even cuter. And drunk. Very, very drunk. Someone introduces us. We shake hands. There's that weird moment of familiarity, and he squints at me. Wait, he says. You used to wait at the bus stop on Maple and 5th, right? My brain short circuits. Yeah, I say. You were always across the street. His face lights up. Dude, I used to think you were so hot, he blurts, then immediately looks embarrassed. I mean, you're still hot. Yeah, drunk, but honest. I'll give him that. We end up talking, and it's easy. We laugh about how we spent months mutually staring at each other from opposite sides of the road, like shy stalkers. He's actually kind of funny, in that slurred, tipsy way. At some point, one of us suggests moving somewhere quieter to talk. So we wander around to the front of the house and sit down on the front steps. It's cooler there, away from the grill and the music and the shouts from the backyard. Cars occasionally roll by. The sky is doing that deep navy dusk thing, street lights just flickering on. We're side by side, knees almost touching. The conversation starts out loud and animated, then gradually softens, slows. There's that familiar shift, you know the one, where the talking gets less important, and the silence between sentences feels heavy but not uncomfortable. He inches a little closer. I feel him looking at me. That teenage electricity starts to crackle. My heart is beating way too fast. This is bus stop guy, the mysterious across-the-street crush. And now he's right here, on this stupid concrete step, smelling like cheap beer and body spray, and I'm into it. We lean in. Slowly. So slowly. You know how in movies it's all smooth and romantic? This was like that, except with way more adrenaline, and the sudden, terrifying realization that I had no idea what I was doing, but I was absolutely not backing out now. Our faces are inches apart. I can feel his breath. My eyes flutter shut, and then he explodes. Not romantically, not emotionally. Vomit, like a fire hose, straight down between his legs. Loud, violent, unstoppable. I jerk back so fast I nearly fall off the step. It's like the world's most disgusting magic trick. 1 second we're about to kiss. The next second there is a waterfall of cheap alcohol and regret splashing onto the concrete. He's groaning, bracing himself with one hand against the step, the other on his stomach. "Oh my God," he manages. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." I'm standing now, half horrified, half trying not to laugh because it is objectively the worst timing in human history. It's okay, I say, because what else do you say? You're fine. Just stay there. Don't move. I'll get you some water. I find someone inside, let them know their friend is painting the front steps, and get him a glass of water and a wad of paper towels that are way too optimistic for the situation. I do my best to pat his shoulder, say comforting things, and pretend the almost kiss didn't happen. Then I go back to the party, hang around long enough that it doesn't seem like I'm fleeing the scene, and eventually head home. To his credit, he felt terrible about it. A couple of days later, he messaged me, sober, apologetic, and still clearly interested. "I'm so embarrassed," he wrote. "Can I make it up to you? Let me take you out on a real date." I thought about it. The vomit was bad, sure, but everyone gets too drunk sometimes, especially at that age. And we had had some chemistry before his stomach betrayed him. So I said, "Fuck it. Sure. One more chance." He was thrilled. We picked a day. He told me he had the perfect spot in mind. Spoiler, he did not. The perfect spot, it turned out, was a graveyard. In broad daylight. To drink. He showed up with a cheap bottle of something vaguely alcoholic, led me between rows of headstones, and plopped himself down in the grass like this was a normal, charming date idea. I remember looking around at the graves, then at the bottle, then at him, and thinking, oh, you're not just unlucky. You're very, very dumb. He wasn't being deep. There was no emotional backstory. No, I come here to think about life moment. When I asked, he just shrugged and said something like, "It's chill here. No one bothers you. And it's kind of metal, right?" No, it was not kind of metal. It was disrespectful and stupid, and also extremely uncomfortable to be tipsy next to someone's nana. He got steadily drunker, made a couple of clumsy passes, and kept saying things that confirmed, minute by minute, that there was nothing going on behind those pretty eyes but static and cheap beer fumes. At some point, sitting in the grass between headstones with a guy whose best idea of romance was graveyard but make it alcohol, I mentally checked out. We finished up. I made an excuse about needing to go. He tried to kiss me goodbye, and I dodged with a hug. I went home and never spoke to him again. Back in the car, my husband was wheezing laughing by the time I got to the part about the graveyard. "So let me get this straight," he said. "He almost kissed you, vomited everywhere, then took you to a cemetery to drink in the daytime as his redemption arc." "Yep," I said. Teenage me had range. He shook his head, still grinning. "And somehow, after all that, I'm the one who ended up with you." "Yeah," I said, reaching over to squeeze his hand. "Because you never threw up on my shoes or tried to seduce me next to a tombstone. Low bar. You cleared it." I was still in that awkward, floaty phase of being new to a city where every street looks the same and you can't remember which corner has the good coffee and which one smells like hot trash. My social life at that point was basically coworkers, my phone, and Tinder. I matched with Lily, and I got a little too excited. She only gave me easy banter, no weird pauses, no unhinged oversharing. She was sharp, witty, and threw back just as much sarcasm as I gave. Eventually, I suggested we meet up. "Okay, cocktail expert," she wrote, "pick a place." I took that too seriously. I spent an embarrassing amount of time hunting for the perfect bar, reading reviews, checking photos, comparing menus like I was doing a dissertation instead of planning a first date. I sent her a short list of places: a speakeasy with moody lighting, a rooftop bar with skyline views, a quirky basement place with live jazz. She ignored all of them. "There's actually this one place I really love," she replied, and sent me the name of a bar I'd never heard of. I looked it up. It seemed fine. Not bad, not amazing. Kind of middle of the road. Neon sign, dark wood interior, generic bar food, a back wall of bottles and taps. No outstanding reviews. No horror stories either. Just aggressively average. I tried suggesting somewhere else, gently. "Yeah, that one looks cool. But have you seen this rooftop spot? Or this speakeasy?" Could be fun. She brushed it off. Honestly, I really want to go to this one. It's my favorite. I feel comfortable there. I pushed again, half joking. You sure? I'm trying to impress you here. She doubled down. Trust me. This bar. I won't take no for an answer, smiling face with horns. The little devil emoji should have been my warning, but I wrote it off as flirty. In the back of my mind, I figured maybe she knew the staff. Maybe she had friends working there, or it was her go-to-safe spot. I'd heard of women doing that, going to a familiar bar so the bartender could keep an eye out in case the date went sideways. It made sense. Honestly, I respected it, so I agreed. All right, your bar it is. The night of the date, I got there a little early. The place looked exactly like I expected in person. Dim lighting, a couple of TVs playing sports, a jukebox that probably only worked half the time, and a long bar with a mountain of bottles behind it. There weren't many people there yet, just a few regulars and 2 bartenders, one older guy and one absolute unit. I'm not a small guy, but this dude was huge. Easily 6 feet 3 inches, broad shoulders, thick arms. The kind of guy who looks like he can bench press a small car without warming up. He was restocking glasses and not smiling. I ordered a drink and tried to make small talk. How's your night going, man? He barely looked at me. Fine. Okay then. I chalked it up to him being tired, or maybe having dealt with idiots all day. Bartenders see some things. A little while later, Lily walked in. And yeah, she was even more gorgeous in person. Hair done, simple dress, that effortless confidence some people just have when they walk into a room. She smiled when she saw me, and I felt my nerves calm down a notch. Hey, she said, giving me a quick hug. She smelled like something floral and expensive. You found it? Yeah, I said. Hard to miss the big neon sign. We grabbed a table near the end of the bar. Once we got talking, it was easy. Conversation flowed. We made fun of the music, talked about how weird it is being new to a city, swapped terrible roommate stories. She laughed a lot. I relaxed. The drinks were solid. For a while, it felt like I'd nailed it. The big bartender kept glancing over, though. I noticed it in glimpses. The way his eyes would flick to our table when he wasn't making drinks. The tightness in his jaw. The complete lack of friendliness when he came over to ask if we wanted another round. Another? He said, staring at me like I'd personally wronged him. Yeah, I said. I'll have another old-fashioned. Lily? She smiled up at him. Same for me. Thanks. He nodded, expression unchanged, and walked off like he'd rather pour the drinks on my head than in my glass. I leaned in a little. Is he always that cheerful? I joked. She laughed. He's something. The night went on. At some point, curiosity got the better of me. I brought up the bar choice. So, I said, I have to ask. Out of all the places in the city, why this bar? You were pretty adamant about it. She paused, took a sip of her drink, and then said it as casually as if she were telling me the time. Oh, my ex-boyfriend works here. I blinked. Your ex works here, I repeated slowly. She nodded. Yeah. My brain immediately tried to fix it, like maybe they broke up ages ago and they're just super mature and chill now. Maybe they're friends. Maybe I shouldn't assume things. How long ago did you guys break up? I asked, doing my best to sound relaxed. She thought for a second. Like 2 weeks ago? I nearly choked on my drink. 2 weeks? Yeah, she said. We were together for a few years, but it was time. It's fine. I nodded slowly, every red flag in the universe unfurling in my mind like a parade. Is he here right now? I asked, even though I already knew. She tilted her head toward the bar. Yeah, that's him. I turned. The giant bartender. The one who'd been acting like I was a fly that needed swatting. He was standing behind the bar, staring directly at me. Not at us, at me. His face didn't show anything dramatic, but his eyes had that look. The I know exactly who you are, and I do not like you look. And suddenly everything clicked. Why she insisted on this bar. Why she wouldn't compromise. Why he'd been hostile from the moment I walked in. I was the rebound date. In his bar. At his workplace. 2 weeks after their breakup. I turned back to her. So, he's taking this well? She shrugged. He'll live. I just like the drinks here. Sure. The drinks. For the next 15 minutes, I could physically feel his glare stabbing into the side of my head every time we laughed. Every time I leaned in. Every time she touched my arm. To be fair, she seemed completely unbothered. She kept talking, joking, sip. Looking back, the wildest part is that the date technically started before I even met him. He made me Uber to him. Not like, hey, let's meet halfway, or I'll come toward you because you're closer to the bar. No. He sends me an address for this nice-looking building across town and says, come here and we'll Uber together. It was $20 one way. I live 2 blocks from a whole strip of bars and restaurants. But sure, let me spend $40 round trip so I can accompany a grown man in a car to a bar I could have walked to in 5 minutes. I remember staring at the Uber total, already a bit annoyed, but talking myself into it. Maybe he's nervous about meeting at my place. Maybe he doesn't know the area. Maybe this building is amazing and I'm being dramatic. Spoiler, I was not being dramatic. I get to his building. It is nice, I'll give him that. Big lobby, polished floors, the whole I have my life together aesthetic. He comes down to meet me, all cologne and fake charm, and we order an Uber, back to a bar 2 blocks from my condo. So I've now paid $40 to travel in a circle. I try to brush it off. City life is expensive, first dates are awkward, whatever. We get to the bar, sit down, and that's when he pulls a full pint of Svedka out of his coat, like we're about to pregame a frat party, not sit in a normal public place. He unscrews the cap, tilts his head back, and chugs. Not a sip. Not a casual, I'll just have a little. He downs the entire thing in one go, like it's water, and he's been lost in the desert for 3 days. I just stare at him. The bartender stares at him. People nearby stare at him. He slams the empty bottle down, wipes his mouth with the back of his hand, and goes, okay, now I'm ready. Ready for what? I don't know. An exorcism, maybe. He flags the bartender over and orders 2 drinks without asking what I want. I'm thinking, okay, at least he's buying the first round after I just paid to time travel via Uber. Drinks come, he slides one in front of me, raises his glass for a toast. Then shoves the bill toward me. Can you get this one? I'll get the next, he says, already turning away like it's settled. At this point, I know I should have just walked out. But you know that social freeze where your brain is screaming this is insane, but your body produces a polite smile instead? That was me. I paid. He then proceeds to blatantly hit on the bartender in a language I don't speak. She clearly understands him, because her body language goes from neutral service worker to please let a sinkhole swallow me in about 3 seconds. I can't understand the words, but I understand the tone. She's uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable. He's oblivious. Eventually, he turns back to me like nothing happened and goes, so where do you live? I tell him the name of my building. It's a pretty nice high-rise nearby. Nothing crazy, but decent. His eyes light up like I just told him I live in a castle. Oh really? I've heard that one is nice, he says. I like your building better than mine. Maybe I'll stay with you for a few days and check it out. I'm thinking of buying a penthouse. He says it like he's asking to borrow a pen. I blink. You want to stay with me? Yeah, he says, totally serious. You know, just for a few days. Get a feel for the building. Oh no, I say. If you're interested in the building, you can contact a realtor. They'll be happy to show you around. He doesn't take that well. His face twists, and suddenly I'm the villain in his story. He starts raising his voice, accusing me of being rude, of not trusting him, of not understanding how real estate works. I'm sitting there like, sir, this is a Chili's-level cocktail bar. The bartender is now openly watching us like she's deciding whether to cut him off or call security. And then, mid-rant, I glance down and see his phone. He's on Tinder, actively, swiping, while loudly arguing with me. He jabs his finger at the screen, then shoves the phone in my face. He's pulled up another girl's profile. I'm gonna fuck her if you don't let me in, he snarls. I look at the phone. I look at him. My brain does a hard reset. Go for it, I say. I'm not interested. That throws him. He doesn't expect that. He sputters, calls me a bitch, then insists we're leaving. At that point, I'm more than ready to go, but I also don't want him knowing my exact apartment. Still, I'm 2 blocks from home. I figure I can outwalk him if I need to. We leave the bar, and he follows me. The whole way. He's stumbling, still drunk off the Svedka he pounded earlier, grabbing at my arm and yelling. He keeps alternating between I love you, you're a bitch, and vague threats. At one point, he makes a grab for my purse and I yank it back, heart suddenly pounding for real. I keep walking straight toward my building, phone in hand, ready to call someone, anyone. I'm scanning for people, cameras, open doors, anything that makes this less isolated. And then out of nowhere, the police show up. I must have looked as freaked out as I felt, because they come straight to me. One officer steps between us, another keeps him back. They ask if I'm okay, if I know him, what's going on. I tell them we were on a date, he's drunk, he's following me and grabbing me. They get enough of the picture. They hold him there, probably as much as they legally can without a full incident, long enough for me to walk the rest of the way to my building and get safely inside. I'm shaking in the elevator. Later that night, my phone starts lighting up. He sends a series of bizarre, threatening messages. They swing wildly from, I love you, you don't understand me, to you're a bitch, you ruined everything, to darker, more aggressive threats that make my stomach knot. Then he circles back to you're my only hope, then jumps to something vile and violent. I block him. The next day, still rattled, I post about it on Facebook, no name, just describing the experience and a few details. Within hours, my notifications blow up. Friends message me. Was he tall, dark hair, lives in a nice building? Did he make you pay for stuff? Did he try to stay with you? One by one, stories start pouring in. Turns out, he's basically couch surfing his way through women. Homeless, but saying he lives in luxury buildings. Staying at people's places for a few days, borrowing their clothes, their bags, their stuff so he can look wealthier and legit to the next person he targets. Running the same con over and over, just varied enough to make each person feel like it's unique. If I'd let him in, I'd have been stuck with a drunk, unstable stranger in my home, surrounded by my things, knowing exactly where I lived and how to get to me. The thought makes my skin crawl. Instead, I got a terrifying, chaotic red flag parade of a first date, and a very loud reminder to trust my instincts when something feels off from the jump. $40 in Uber, a bar 2 blocks from my house, a bottle of Svedka, an unhinged rant, a Tinder swipe mid-argument, the police, and a homeless con artist. Honestly, I've had better nights. So, let me tell you about the time I accidentally went on a Tinder date with a couple. And no, this was not advertised. There was no warning label. No, by the way, I come with attachments. Nothing. Just pure, unfiltered chaos. It started like any other mildly delusional online dating attempt. I matched with this guy named Callum. His pictures were a mix of gym mirror thirst traps, a dog in a shark costume, and a blurry photo that looked like it had been taken during the last 5 seconds of a music festival. His bio said something like 6 feet 2 inches, good cook, emotionally available on weekdays, which I decided to take as sarcasm and not a confession of emotional instability. He messaged me first, which already put him above half the app, and we actually had decent conversation. Not a single WID. Not even one unsolicited comment about my body. He asked real questions, like a human being whose brain hadn't been replaced by protein powder and Red Bull. There was banter, jokes, even one slightly flirty voice note that made me go, okay, maybe he isn't a walking red flag. After 3 days, he asked me out for drinks. Normal. Fine. Perfectly acceptable. The only mild red flag was that he suggested a place with cocktails that cost like 14 pounds each, but I figured, hey, maybe he has a real job. I got ready. Wore the good dress. Put on eyeliner, so sharp it could have doubled as a weapon. I showed up early because I'm chronically anxious, and also because showing up late gives me hives. I texted him, hey, I'm here, smiley face. 2 minutes later, the door opens. Callum walks in. He is, shockingly, exactly like his pictures. Actually hotter, which should have been great news. Except he wasn't alone. Behind him walked a woman. A very pretty woman. Like unfairly pretty. Hot in a way that made me want to step up my skincare routine. For one blissful second, I assumed she was a random stranger walking in at the same time. Maybe a hostess. Maybe a ghost. Anyone but someone with him. But no. They walked side by side. The body language was unmistakable. He waved at me. Waved. Like this was a group hangout we had all planned together. Hey, he said, smiling like sunshine. This is Jade. Jade gave me one of those bright, glossy smiles you give someone you've definitely Instagram stalked. Hi. So nice to meet you. I've heard so much about you. Heard from who? The imaginary version of me? The Tinder chat he showed her? We sit down in a booth, me on one side, them on the other like I'm being interviewed on their relationship podcast. Drinks come out. I order something strong enough to stun a cow. We talk. Small talk. Normal but not normal. Jade keeps giving Callum these flirty little looks. He keeps smiling back. I feel like the world's most confused chaperone. Finally, I ask the question. So, how do you two know each other? Jade giggles and touches his arm. Oh, we're together. I blink. Together? Yeah, Callum says casually. 3 years. 3 years. I had been talking to this man for 3 entire days, and somehow he forgot to mention his 3-year-long girlfriend. Right? I say, because that's all my brain can manage. Then Jade leans forward, lowers her voice, and drops the bomb. We're really open though. And Callum said you seemed like someone who might be adventurous. We just wanted to see if there was a vibe between all of us. I nearly choked on my drink. Callum nods like this is a perfectly logical sentence. No pressure, obviously. But we thought you'd be a great fit. A great fit. For what? Their relationship. Their bedroom? Some awkward couple's bucket list? I take a long, soul-searching sip of my cocktail. Okay, I say finally, just to clarify. You invited me on a first date, and brought your girlfriend. Without saying a word, Callum shrugs. I didn't want to scare you off before we met. Funny, I say, because this is actually much more terrifying. Jade tries to smooth things over, but at that point I'd reached the stage of calm that only comes from utter disbelief. I stood up, finished my drink like a champion, and said, Look, I respect the lifestyle, genuinely, but ambushing someone into a threesome audition is not the way to do it. And then I left. Just walked right out. I hope they found another girl that night. I hope she was adventurous. And I hope, truly sincerely, that Callum learned what the word warning means. By the time she said it, my coffee was still too hot to drink. We were sitting in a crowded Starbucks in Midtown, the kind with floor-to-ceiling windows facing the street, where everyone outside looked like a movie extra in a winter coat. It was our first time meeting in person, after a few days of messaging. I was still trying to decide if she looked more like her photos or her filters when she leaned back, wrapped both hands around her latte, and casually dropped it. I'm sleeping with a married coworker. I thought I'd misheard her over the milk frother screaming behind the counter. Sorry? I said, lifting one of my earbuds off the table, like that was the problem. She smiled. Not a guilty smile. Not a nervous one either. Just amused. Her lipstick was the exact shade of, I knew that would shock you. I'm sleeping with a married coworker, she repeated, like she was telling me her favorite TV show. And my favorite part is when he cries after. You know, from guilt. She took a sip of her drink. I stared at her. Outside, a taxi honked. Somewhere in the back, they were loudly blending something. But everything sounded muted for a second, like the world had gone underwater. You like that? I asked eventually. She shrugged, stirring the foam with that green plastic stick. I mean, yeah, it's entertaining. He gets all, I'm a horrible person, and what am I doing? And I'm just lying there like, you tell me, Mark. His name is Mark, I repeated, because my brain had apparently given up and entered echo mode. She nodded, amused at my discomfort. Works in finance. Wears a ring. Has a golden retriever. 2 kids. One of them is starting ballet. He showed me pictures once. Big mistake. I blinked. You don't feel bad? Not even a little. She tilted her head, considering. I mean, he's the one cheating. I didn't take any vows. I barely take my lunch break. Why would I take responsibility for his life choices? It was such a clean, sharp sentence it almost impressed me. Almost. Then why do you like seeing him cry? I asked. That part specifically. That made her smile wider. She leaned in, elbows on the table, voice dropping just enough that I had to focus. Because for 15 minutes, he pretends he's this powerful, important man, she said. You know, big shot at the office. Big ego. All that confidence. And then afterward, you see the real him. The real him, I repeated. The messy one, she said. The one who's terrified of losing everything, but still can't stop. It's like watching his mask fall off in real time. And I'm the only one who gets to see it. She sat back again, eyes scanning my face like she was taking notes. You think that makes me awful, don't you? She asked lightly. I hesitated. I think it makes you honest, I said carefully. And maybe a tiny bit terrifying. She laughed, loud enough that the guy at the next table glanced over. Good, she said. Terrifying men never tells you this stuff. Terrifying women lead with it. She took another drink of her latte, then sighed. So, she said, changing the subject like she hadn't just opened a portal into moral chaos. What about you? Any complicated situations? Or are you just boring? I wrapped my hands around my cup, finally brave enough to take a sip. The coffee burned my tongue, but I didn't let it show. Honestly, I said, I thought I was interesting before I sat down. Now I'm pretty sure I'm the most stable person in this room. She grinned, eyes bright. Don't worry, she said. If we keep hanging out, I can fix that. I online date quite a bit, for I don't have the time or desire to go to a pub to meet women, and also it is a great tool for weeding out the crazies. One of my worst experiences was a few years ago, and really it isn't all that bad, however you may enjoy my tale. We met on Match.com and hit it off in email pretty well with a few small warning signs that at the time seemed like general inquisitiveness. Signs like, "What is your job? Does that pay well?" In addition, her constant drive for acceptance, compliments, status, and her devout materialism. Being less cynical then than I am now, we set up a date and agree on a moderately fancy place in downtown Seattle. We set our date for 7, and I make reservations. When I arrive 5 minutes early, she is already at the table and has 3 empty martini glasses before her and nursing her 4th. Her photos were not all that out of date and represented her, perhaps 10 pounds lighter, but they definitely were not up to date. She dressed to impress, but in my mind's eye, I recall something not being right about it all. Through the date, she kept trying to impress me about things she owned, places she had been, and name-dropping famous people she claimed to have known. Her continued emphasis on equating her worth to material things, and her continued inquiries about my worth, such as, "Do you rent?" with a sneer, or "Do you own?" were rapidly rising from warning to alarming. When it came time to order, she chose the most expensive thing on the menu, surf and turf with lobster, and ordered not 1, but 2 more Bombay Sapphire martinis, which she plowed through during the meal, while only touching 1 or 2 bites of her entire meal. I kept my end chit-chat small, and enjoyed my meal and paired wine, and let her continue her self-aggrandizement. For dessert, she ordered some $50 chocolate champagne truffle mousse and 2 more cocktails. I had coffee. I was beginning to grow concerned not just for my wallet, but also that she might actually be a pretty hardcore alcoholic. She had 2 bites of her dessert through the hour we talked and sent it off, like her meal, not requesting a doggy bag. As she siphoned off those 2 drinks, bringing her known total to 8 in 2.5 hours, I realized that there was something absolutely wrong with this person at a fundamental level, and getting any more involved with her would probably be a very, very bad idea. When the waiter appeared after the dessert, I said to him, "We will take the checks, please," with an emphasis on the S. On cue, she excused herself to the ladies' room. The waiter got my subtlety and promptly returned with 2 bill books and placed one on her setting, and I gave him my card. She remained in the bathroom until the waiter returned with my card and the receipt. As she came to the table complaining loudly about the bathroom, I bid her good evening and told her that I really wasn't interested in pursuing a relationship with her, but that I wished her the best of luck, and turned to walk to the door. About the time I got to the door, I heard her scream, "$400, I am not paying this," and I walked out. I never heard from her again, and I hope she got the help that she needs. Also, I would like to add that since this date, I moved from the Pacific Northwest to a suburb of Stockholm, Sweden. Where here in Sweden, at least on the first date, women always pay for themselves because regardless of gender, equality is equality. I kinda like this, and although I absolutely do not mind treating a date, I think that it sets an obligation-free atmosphere for a date that allows us to get to know one another without the specter of one person being beholden to another over a meal. I'm 35. I have a solid office job, a nice home, and great friends. I work out sometimes. I also make a lot of excuses about why I can't work out today, but I definitely will tomorrow. I'm normal. Average. Not fishing for compliments, just stating facts. But for the life of me, I cannot keep a guy around. I didn't even know how to start meeting good guys until a few years ago when dating apps exploded onto the scene. Quick history lesson, in case this is being heard in the distant future, or the past, because honestly, who knows anymore. In the mid-2010s, online dating became completely normal. Whatever you were looking for, casual date, serious relationship, one-night stand, there was an app for that. Most of the time, it was fine. Sometimes you'd meet someone looking for more or less than you, but usually it was just fine. Then, of course, there were the liars. And the lunatics. I dealt with so many 5'6" guys who swore they were over 6 feet. So many old high school pictures where the hair was thick, the jawline was strong, and the reality check was overdue. Look, I don't care if you're bald or short, just don't act like I won't notice when we meet in person. Now, to set expectations, I'm a normal-looking woman. Not a head-turner, not a horror show. Like most women, I wish I was taller, thinner, and curvier in all the right places. But I also libido eat and hate to work out, so really I know what I signed up for. I even had friends go over my dating profile, just to make sure I was presenting myself honestly. I didn't want to be a catfish. I wanted someone who knew exactly what they were getting. An average woman with an appetite for life who really didn't want to be alone anymore. And yet, I kept meeting lunatics. There were the toe guys. So many of them. One wanted to put my toes in his ears. Another asked if I could record myself snoring. A few wanted to hook up in the bathroom, and one, not kidding, wanted to do it on the bar itself. I said no to all of those things. I'm not here to kink shame, but that is a lot for a first date with a stranger. And while the occasional weird experience makes for a funny story, too many start to weigh you down. Not that every date was a disaster. There were a few bright spots. Take Sam. Sweet guy. Took me bowling, way more fun than I expected. Made me laugh, was ridiculously cute. We hit it off right away. I took him home, had my way with him, and for a moment, it felt like maybe this dating app thing could work. And then after a week, he vanished. Enter Bill. Rough around the edges, in a fun way. Took me to a rodeo bar. We got drunk and tried the mechanical bull. I lasted all of 3 seconds before it launched me across the room. Bill did way better until he didn't. He wiped out so hard he fractured his arm. But did that stop the night? No, sir. We still went back to my place. And then, just like Sam, a few weeks later, poof. Gone. These were 2 of my success stories. But let's be real. You're not here for the good ones. You want to hear about the worst one. Oh, don't worry. I've got a story for you. John. John was your average liar and lunatic. His profile said he had an explosive personality. His photo said he had hair, a beard, muscles. All lies. We met at some generic restaurant. He ordered some forgettable meal, drank table water, and spent the entire date resembling a blank Lego minifigure with a few stray hairs on top. No personality, no conversation, just a void in human form. He answered every question with one word. He didn't ask me anything. By the time he walked me to my car, I was already halfway inside, mumbling a quick bye as I sped off. That was supposed to be it. I went home, drank half a bottle of wine, passed out in bed with my vibrator. Then hours later, I woke up to the sound of pans clanging in my kitchen. My body knew something was wrong before my brain caught up. My skin prickled. The house was dark, except for the faint glow from the kitchen. And the smell. Was that bacon? I crept downstairs. My kitchen is small, an island in the middle, cabinets underneath, stove and fridge on the far side. And there, standing in front of the stove, wearing nothing but my apron, was John. Cooking bacon. I could only see his upper half, but it was very clear there was nothing else on him. Hello. I stammered. I should have screamed. I should have grabbed something heavy. But my brain was still buffering. John turned, beaming from ear to ear. Honey, you're awake. His voice was weirdly cheerful. I was just about to wake you, sleepyhead. Wouldn't want you missing today. His smile never faltered, not even when he shouted. My stomach twisted. It's 2 a.m, John. What are you doing here? How do you know where I live? He laughed. Loud, exaggerated, like I'd just told the funniest joke in the world. Ha. 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 Honey, you're killing me. What am I doing here? This is my house. Where else would I be? Want some juice? I glanced at the counter. A glass of something orange sat waiting. I don't keep juice in my house. Okay. Funny joke. John, please leave or I'll. Slam. He brought my skillet down onto the counter, so hard the tile cracked. I worked so hard for this family, he hissed. Here I am, making you breakfast on our 35th wedding anniversary, and you can't even sit down and drink your juice. His face was burning red, but his smile never wavered. I cannot believe you made me raise my voice like that. His tone softened immediately like he'd just scolded a child. Especially in front of Tiffany. Tiffany? Who the hell is Tiffany? I snapped. Another laugh. Ha. Ha. Honey, you're a riot. He reached down behind the island and pulled up a woman. She was beautiful. Looked about my age. She was also very much not conscious. Now, Tiffany, John cooed, hoisting her onto the kitchen island like a rag doll. She let out a soft groan. Surely Mommy is kidding. She knows today is a special day. I froze. John pulled a knife from the counter and pressed it against Tiffany's neck. Mommy knows today is special, he whispered, and trying to leave the house today will make Daddy very unhappy. His grin was locked in place. Now, Mommy, drink your juice. I had 2 priorities. 1, make sure this woman didn't die in my kitchen. 2, do not drink the fucking juice. The bacon was burning. The air smelled thick with it. I took slow steps forward, scanning for anything I could use. John was completely naked under the apron, which was deeply unfortunate. He had at least one knife. Tiffany was bound at the wrists and ankles, barely responsive. I had the advantage of knowing my own damn house. And I was not drinking that juice. My hands were shaking, so when I reached for the glass, I dropped it. It shattered on the floor. John froze. His head turned slowly, eyes burning, and a smile still stretched across his face. "Sweetie," I cooed, forcing myself to sound playful. "Can you stop cooking bacon? You know I don't like my food overcooked." His expression softened instantly. He turned to the charred strips in the pan. "Duh." He smacked his forehead, laughing. "Of course, honey. Ha. Ha. Let me pour you a new drink." As he moved toward the fridge, I edged toward the island. My stomach churned when I saw it. Yep. Fully erect under the apron. I swallowed bile. "I'll grab the broom for the glass." John's entire body snapped toward me. "You'll sit the fuck down and do what you're told." Tiffany whimpered. "You hear that, honey?" John cooed. "Tiffany doesn't like when mommy tries to leave daddy." He pressed the knife back to her throat. "And we don't want her to cry, do we?" I sat down. "No, sweetie. We don't want that." John relaxed and turned back to the oven. I tried again. "You know, I could always go to..." "Go!" John screamed. He slammed a fresh glass against the wall. "Why do you women always have to go?" His breathing was ragged. "I'm trying to make a beautiful Christmas dinner, and everyone always wants to leave." He grabbed a shard of broken glass from the floor and threw it at me. I flinched as it skittered across the island. "Honey," his voice was eerily calm again. "It's a mess in here." He gestured to the broken shards. "Pick up the glass. With your fingers. While you still have them." I froze. "Now!" I jumped. My hands shook as I started picking up the glass, tears slipping down my cheeks. Not from pain. From helplessness. By the time I was done, John was standing over me. And I was done playing along. "Wow, sweetie. You really are such a big, strong man. You do such a great job providing for me and..." Fuck. I forgot her name. "Tiffany," he screamed. "How do you forget your own daughter's name? All of you bitches are so self-centered. Here I am, a nice guy who works hard, and I get nothing." He was now groping Tiffany, with one hand while lightly scraping the knife along her back. I was glad she was barely conscious for this. "You have me." I screamed again, trying to play along. I did not want anyone to die in my kitchen. "You have me in this beautiful house that you built." He stopped with the knife and took his hand off her. He never stopped smiling. "It's time for my present," he hissed. "For our anniversary?" I asked. "No. It's my birthday," John shouted. He went into a brief rage and sliced Tiffany's cheek. She started to stir. "I can't believe how awful of a wife you are. Do you know how many other women have died because they weren't special like you? So many." His face was blood red, but the smile never left. "But you're just like all the others. And I need to teach you a lesson. I need to give you my present." He grabbed Tiffany by the hair and dragged her. He grabbed my hair and did the same. He opened the door to my pantry and slammed it shut. Then he dragged us into the living room, but a car drove by, illuminating the room for a moment. "No, not in here," he muttered. "Where can a man do some thinking around here?" he shouted. He started to rub his still hard dick on Tiffany's face through my apron. "The basement, sweetie, at the end of the hall." I stammered. "I know where my own goddamn basement is, you slut," he shouted back. He dragged me and Tiffany into the basement. He struggled with the heavy door but managed to yank it open. I knew I was running out of time. If something didn't happen soon, I was dead. He kept muttering to himself about how underappreciated he was. "After decades of hard work trying to build a family, this is how you treat me." I had one last move to play. "Sweetie, we were just kidding. Tiffany and I didn't forget about your birthday. Your present is in your man cave." I indicated the door in the basement. He stopped holding the knife to Tiffany, who was starting to come around. "It is." He was puzzled, but then he corrected himself. "Of course it is." He dragged us over to the door. "And this present better be everything I want." He caressed himself and licked the knife. "You'll see. I don't want to ruin the surprise," I spat out. Let's go. As a family." He dragged us toward the door. "I want to always remember this perfect moment." He stopped talking when he opened the door, and the light automatically turned on. "What the fuck?" He let go of Tiffany and me and started to dry heave. The cold air of my walk-in freezer wafted over us along with the smell. I took the opportunity to lunge, mouth open, and took a bite out of his throat. I gulped it down, and he looked at me in shock. I grabbed what little hair he had left and yanked him back like a Pez dispenser. I took 2 more big bites out of his neck and let him fall to my floor. Like I said, I don't like my food overcooked. From an old post of mine and a different dating app, but here goes. I went out on a date with this woman. We went to a restaurant to have dinner. She seemed a little spacey, a low talker, kind of pretty, but a little disconnected with reality. We have a nice conversation I barely can hear. By the end of the date, usually people do a hug or say, "We should do this again sometime." She walked away, then walked back as if she remembered that's generally common human courtesy, to do some kind of goodbye. Kind of weird, I should have ended it there. So I go out with her again. We go to see the movie Annihilation about the scientists who explore an alien landing site. Partway through the movie, she starts freaking out and covering her eyes. This movie isn't even that scary. Afterwards, we go to the movie theater bar, where she needs to take time processing all the visuals she just saw. She's still kind of freaking out, but we get to talking. She shows me a reservation she made for the weekend. I look at it. It's not the name she used on her dating profile. And come to think of it, she never mentioned anything of that before, and it was a bit weird. I probably should have ended it there. So I go out with her again. We make plans. I'm going to pick her up at her place, and we're going to get Thai food. I get there, she texts me. "I'm just finishing up my coffee. Come on in." She lives on some off-street with no road, one of those alleyway streets with only walking access. She lets me in at the gate. Looking at the apartment in front, which is completely empty, wood floors, figure this is a nice place. I knock on the door. She opens, and her giant dog that's like 100 pounds walks over to greet us. Now the dog does nothing wrong, just walks over. She looks at the dog, snaps her fingers, and stares at it. She has this dog under her control. On a dime. Oh, good boy. Now normally dog owners do shit like that to assert dominance, but this seemed a little more controlling than usual. We tour her place. And by the way, she's not finishing her coffee. She just poured it, and I'm itching to get food. "Would you like some coffee?" "No, I want to get Thai food." Anyway, her place is nice. Furnished, sweet kitchen with pots, pans, full knife set and utensils. She's living pretty sweet. She's a psychiatrist who does at-home consultations, so I see pill bottles all over the table. We sit down, and she's CEI-upping this coffee. Maybe 15 to 20 minutes later, her roommate comes from downstairs, who also shares the same first name as me. He's kind of a large gamer dude. He goes to the kitchen, goes back upstairs, and comes down with a black roll. Only 2 people carry these, chefs and assassins. I know what it is immediately, and I start to freak out. It's a set of knives. Remember, the kitchen already had a sweet knife set. I don't know what the fuck is going on. But maybe he's a chef. Nope. He rolls it out and starts sharpening it on a metal stick, looking me in the eye. I'm thinking a chef would use a whetstone if they really gave a shit about their knives. I look to her. She's cool as a cucumber, as if nothing weird is happening. He goes to the kitchen to cut his vegetables. I see him cut onion from the bottom, and I'm like, that guy has no clue what he's doing. I gotta get out of here. My hand is on the doorknob at this point. She stands up, goes to the kitchen, and pours herself another cup of coffee and sits down. And she asks, "You sure you don't want a cup?" I look at those meds on the table and think, I don't know what the fuck you're gonna put in that drink, lady. You and your serial killer roommate. And I'm practically shitting my pants for another 20 minutes. We finally go to the Thai restaurant, where 3 seats down from me was a girl I went out with a few months ago, who I was into, but who also totally ghosted me. Blue hair this time around, and she seemed pretty bored on her date. Anyway, she tells me about her divorce, her being new to town, her living situation, how her roommate was a recovering meth addict she met who she let live in her place while he figured his life out. A lot of the weirdness, she explained, was due to her having synesthesia and ADD, hence getting freaked out by all the colorful images at the movie. And things kind of mellow out, but I can't seem to shake how weird this situation was before. She starts to seem a little more human. But I'm not sure I want to do this, even for the story. I should have ended it there. So I go out with her again. I pick her up, we go to the movie theater. It's one that doesn't let us in if we're 5 minutes late. We go to the bar, she's drinking, I'm like, let's hurry up or they won't let us into the movie. She takes her time. We're 5 minutes late. So we have to wait for the next showing. And at this point, I'm so emotionally guarded, and we're finding that we're not that into each other. We see the movie and grab a bite afterwards, where clearly she also discovers this isn't going anywhere. So she says to me, "So I do this for a living." Oh, I know what's coming. She's going to psychologically analyze me. And she asks all these personal questions. And she gets to the core of me in like a minute. and says some things that just hit home and break me to my core. She's good, and I'm internally just destroyed and a complete mess. She's cool as a cucumber. We go outside, she's trying to get an emotional rise out of me, considering I was very emotionally guarded around her before due to the whole fear of death thing. And it's working. We go back to her place, and I'm a mess. Nothing physical has happened at this point, and I'm debating whether I should try and make a move or see if she wants to do anything. But also, I know it's over, and I watch her with her dog, and she's got full dominance over her dog. And I realize I'm exactly like that dog. And here I am, broken emotionally, under her spell, weak, terrified, and insecure. And I look at the chair behind me, and on it are 2 knives laid out perfectly, on a living room chair. I get the fuck out of there immediately. I walk past their empty apartment up front and think, that's not an empty apartment for rent. That's the staging ground. The whole walk back, I'm thinking how no one will easily find me on this offshoot road. I can't even get to the road fast enough if I needed to. And I was terrified. I was not doing this shit anymore for the story. Later, a friend explained that, more than likely she was just weird and her roommate was trying to scare me off. If she started to get close to me, and I started putting any disparaging thoughts about her roomie into her head, he might lose that meal ticket, which made the most sense. But man, that one might top them for me. Oh boy, I have 2. I matched with a guy I actually knew from middle and high school. Normally I would never go over to the house of a dude I'd met online right away, but I already knew this dude, so I figured it'd be fine. So I get there fully knowing what's going to happen, and I'm okay with that. We start drinking. He keeps giving me more shots and saying I needed to catch up with him. Whatever, that's cool. We get totally trashed and hook up. As I'm laying down in bed afterward, he says, you should probably go. What? I just drove over 30 minutes to get here, and you insisted on getting me drunk. I can't drive home at this point. We get in an argument, and he's saying he just likes to sleep alone. I don't remember the full argument as it was hazy, but I was full on ugly crying. So I offered to sleep on the couch. He refused to let me stay there. Oh, and this is in a rural area where I can't just call a cab or an Uber. So I say sarcastically, I guess I'll just sleep in my car then. Apparently, he thought that was a reasonable solution. So I stayed in my car in 40-degree rain for several hours until I was sober enough to drive home. The second one was worse. This one I actually met on Bumble. He never gave me his actual name, only used initials. I wasn't exactly smitten with him from the beginning of our conversations. He never used punctuation, said a few things that were sort of backhanded, but I brushed it off as a miscommunication, giving him the benefit of the doubt. We met up at a bar after work. I worked the evening shift, so it was fairly late. I sent him a photo showing my outfit right before I headed over, so he would recognize me. I made a joke and said, so don't confuse me with everyone else wearing scrubs at the bar. Remember, it was right after work, I don't live nearby, and I wasn't going through all the effort of getting dolled up for a guy I was on the fence about. I still had my hair done nicely, and put on fresh makeup. His response? It's okay, I don't look great right now either. Thanks. So in the 10 minutes it took me to get downtown, he sent me at least 3 texts asking where I was, if I'm still coming, etc. At a red light, I was able to text him back, looking for parking. Dude says, just park anywhere. It's free after 8 p.m. That wasn't the point, there were no empty spaces. After circling the block a few times, a spot opened up right across the street. So I go in and meet him. Right away this guy is putting his arm around me, trying to kiss me, totally invading my space. Completely unprompted, he assured me 3 times throughout the night that he was not a rapist. He also said I should relax and have fun because he'll take care of me. At one point I jokingly said, I'll just sleep in my car if I can't drive home. I'm seeing a pattern here. He said that was a good idea. He'd make sure all my doors were locked so I was safe. This is on a very busy street downtown in a major US city. He kept ordering me drinks I didn't want. The rum and coke he walked over to the other bar across the room and brought back to me. I pretended to sip, then said it was too strong and I was going to ask the bartender to add some more coke. I walked to the other side of the room and had them switch the entire thing out for plain coke. A while later he asked if I liked sweet drinks. I just kinda said yeah, sometimes, something vague. Within about 3 minutes an AMF shows up in front of me. This was after I'd already told him I was done drinking for the night. This one at least came straight from the bartender, so I knew it wasn't tampered with. I took a few sips to be polite, then suggested we play some pool. While we were getting change, Some guy accidentally knocks over my mostly full AMF. Guy apologizes profusely, offers to buy me a new one. I decline. My date had stepped away, so I was able to subtlety tell the guy, I don't even know this dude. He keeps bringing me drinks I don't want. Guy offers to rub interference. I say yes please. At some point the bartender offers to comp the spilled drink, so I walk down to the end of the bar to order and tell her the same thing. This guy keeps giving me drinks I don't want. She then offers to make me fake drinks with no alcohol for the rest of the night. Perfect. This entire time I'm trying to think of an excuse to GTFO, but we start playing pool with the guy who spilled my drink and some girl. She was really cool, so I was chatting with her. My date told the guy he was from Kenya, even though 20 minutes earlier he told me he was from Somalia. Anyway, as I'm chatting with this girl, not paying attention, apparently my date misses his pool shot. He yells out, "Fuck this is bullshit," and slams down his pool cue on the table before storming off to sit in the corner alone for the rest of the evening. I stayed and talked to the girl for another 15 minutes or so before leaving without saying goodbye. The next day I get a Bumble message from him that said, "Last night was fun." While I was thinking of a way to tell him it was not, in fact, fun in the slightest, he unmatched me. Within 20 minutes. I got a good one. It's a little long but so worth it. Buckle up kids. Match with a younger girl. Looked like your average e-girl that's heavily into astrology. You know what I'm talking about. We casually chat for a couple days. Granted, the conversation is very spaced out between responses, but nothing out of the ordinary. She ends up asking me to come over in the coming days, alluding to sex, which I agree. Next day she gives me the, "Oh, I'm taking a hot shower." I don't really play into it and reply with something deadpan along the lines of cool, being clean is dope. All of a sudden my phone is filled with unsolicited nudes of this girl. I'm taken a bit aback, but she was attractive and we have a date set, so I'm all for it. The night before we're supposed to meet I send a quick, "Hey, we still on for tomorrow?" She ghosts me. I was a bit disappointed, but meh, that's the game we play. The day we were supposed to meet up goes by, still no response. The next day, however, I get a wall of text on my phone from her number while at work. It essentially says, "I don't know why my 16-year-old daughter is sending an adult man nudes and planning to meet up, but I will hunt you down and make you answer for your crimes. You better watch your back, mister," my first name. "You'll be hearing from the police." I am immediately in DEFCON 5. I go into my phone to delete the pictures, but in my rush state I deleted the entire message thread with her, losing the long wall of text. I send out this dumb, "I didn't know she said she was 21 in the app, blah blah blah. I clearly never asked for the nudes." I was so full of adrenaline, it was just a blur. Not but like 30 seconds later I get a call from an out-of-state number coming through. I pick it up and it's a man that keeps calling me Mr., my first name, claiming to be a private investigator that has been hired by the girl's family to find me and have charges filed to arrest me for eliciting and possession of child pornography. Now I thought I was stressed out before, but I am now at 15:10:3 spuppe for me trying to figure out what the fuck is going on and how I got into this mess. I'm just trying to explain I'm an innocent party here. I had no idea and I didn't ask for anything. Everything was her suggestion. They start going into the fact that I didn't try to verify her age and how the app uses age verification, obviously questions I had no answer for. The guy proceeds to tell me they have paperwork filled out and ready to be filled to charge me. At this point we had been talking for about 10 minutes and I start to come off the adrenaline and start thinking rationally. I'm starting to think this seems very odd. Why the fuck are they calling me? Why don't they just file the paperwork and have me arrested? What's the point? Why the fuck does this guy keep calling me Mr., my first name, and not my last name? The PI follows up with, "Well, I've got her dad right here, and he would like a word with you, so here's your chance to sort this out." I'm immediately confused as to what the man would want to say to me. So again I take a defensive stance and start asking why they'd come after me if I'm clearly blindsided by this, and have no interest in underage girls and would have immediately ceased contact had I learned if she was even under 21. He gives me the same, "You should have been more diligent," and then comments how I could have thought she was of age when her nudes show how clearly underdeveloped she was, and then he commented specifically on her breasts. Gross. This was where a switch flipped in me. No caring father in this situation would act like this and comment on his daughter's body in that manner. No way. So I start prodding back while still playing the part. I ask the PI for his credentials. Turns out he's word of mouth only and doesn't have an office. Sketchy. I ask for his work experience because he seems pretty good. Again, won't tell me. I ask for his name so I can check if he's legit. Nope. He's asking the questions, not me. I'm the one in trouble, not him. So I'm sitting here wondering what the point of this phone call is. Why call me if nothing I do can help my chances, as they keep telling me nothing I say will make them not file the charges. Now they're both on speakerphone, and we've been talking for about 20 minutes at this point. I'm pretty much point blank asking them why they're calling me. What's the out? How do we smooth this over? Because they're threatening to have the police come to my work right now and arrest me. I actually work at a luxury car dealership down the street from a police station, so I'm still sweating a bit calling their bluff. Then they finally dropped the bomb. Well, when her parents caught her last night, they got into a huge fight, and she broke the front door before she was sent to a mental hospital. Her dad says if you pay to replace the door, he'll smooth things over with her mom, and they won't file charges. We have the receipt for the door right now. It's about $700 installed. Now, I'm not very good at electronics, but have you ever heard of the Vanimo Cash app? Inside I'm like, there it is, you motherfuckers, this is a fucking scam, I can't believe it. The girl was never real, this whole fucking thing is made up. I tell them yeah, I've heard of it, but don't have it. He tells me to make sure to stay on the line, and he'll tell me how to download it to send them money. I start putting the pieces together. They don't have my last name, as they've only ever called me Mr., my first name, and they never actually said where I worked. I realize the only things they know about me is info they got from the app, my first name and my phone number. I then tell him that this feels fishy, and I'm not so sure about this. He says he's not the one in hot water. He'll just hang up and file the charges if that's what I want. I tell him that if he has everything ready and in front of him, then what's my last name? If you're ready to file charges, then you have my info. Where do I work? What's my last name? He says he doesn't need to go through the paperwork and tell me. I tell him to give me any info about myself other than my first name and phone number, and I'll believe them and pay the full amount. I can tell he's getting frustrated, and I repeat myself. What's my last name, Mr. Private Investigator? Thought you tracked me down? He told me he wasn't there to play games. I called him some choice words and asked how many people they've scammed with this plan. I hung up, and it's been 2 weeks. No more contact or anything came of it. Even though I figured it out before shit hit the fan, it was quite the traumatic experience. Be careful out there, guys. This scam was pretty flushed out. It started like any other casual fling, a typical modern dating story born out of boredom and the swipe of a thumb. Let me tell you about my friend who had her first and last date with the guy she met on Tinder. She was a bartender at a busy spot in our city, the kind of place that was always packed on weekends and kept her pockets full of tips. Let's call her Sarah. She was sharp, funny, and independent, the type of person you'd assume could see through anyone's nonsense. She didn't need anyone to take care of her. She had that covered. Maybe that's why she didn't think twice when she met this guy. His profile was unremarkable, just normal enough to put her at ease. Handsome in a forgettable way, polite but not overly eager. He seemed safe. The date itself was uneventful, she told me later. Drinks at a local dive bar, nothing too fancy. He was charming, funny, and attentive, the kind of guy who asked her questions and actually seemed to listen. They didn't talk about anything too deep, just the kind of casual chatter that comes with getting to know someone new. When he suggested heading back to her place, it didn't feel like a big deal. She was an adult, and she made adult decisions. The next morning, he was gone before she even woke up. He'd left a quick text, something generic like, "Thanks for last night, smiley face." But that was it. She wasn't offended. In fact, she barely thought about him again. It was just another one-night stand, and she moved on with her week. Then a few days later, something strange happened. She was at the grocery store, trying to pay for a carton of milk and some bread, when her debit card got declined. At first, she thought it was just a glitch. Maybe the system was down, or maybe she'd grabbed the wrong card. But when she checked her banking app later, her heart sank. Her account was nearly empty. Hundreds of dollars were gone, spent on things she didn't recognize. There were charges from Best Buy, Grubhub, and a few other stores she hadn't visited in years. It didn't make sense. She immediately went into problem-solving mode. As a bartender, Sarah was good about saving money and keeping her finances in check. She couldn't remember the last time her account had dipped below a comfortable balance, let alone been drained like this. Her first thought was that her card must have been stolen or cloned. But as she racked her brain, she realized something unsettling. The only person who'd had access to her wallet recently was him. Her pulse quickened as she remembered how he'd been alone in her apartment for a few minutes while she'd gone to the bathroom. Could he have taken pictures of her cards? Memorized her numbers? The thought sent a chill down her spine. But it got worse. Out of morbid curiosity, she checked her credit card account, even though she rarely used it. Sure enough, there were charges there too. They weren't for big-ticket items like electronics or food delivery. Instead, they were subscriptions, streaming services she didn't use. Netflix, Hulu, Sling, Amazon Prime. The guy hadn't just stolen her money. He'd stolen pieces of her identity, embedding himself into her life in a way she wouldn't have noticed for weeks if she hadn't checked. She was furious. She opened Tinder to confront him, but his profile was gone. Deleted. It was like he'd vanished into thin air, leaving her with nothing but a growing list of fraudulent charges. She felt helpless, angry, and embarrassed all at once. How could she have been so trusting? So careless? But Sarah wasn't the type to sit back and accept defeat. She remembered they had a mutual friend on Facebook, a co-worker of hers who'd mentioned knowing him briefly. It wasn't much, but it was a lead. She reached out, carefully explaining the situation without diving into too many personal details. "Do you know anything about this guy?" she asked, hoping for some clue that might help her track him down. The response came quickly, and it stopped her cold. "Oh my God," the friend wrote. "He did the exact same thing to me." It was like déjà vu. The friend described meeting him on Tinder, going on a date, and bringing him home. And just like with Sarah, her accounts were drained within days. The friend had been too humiliated to tell anyone about it at the time, chalking it up as a painful lesson learned. But hearing that he'd done the same thing to Sarah lit a fire under both of them. They started digging. Between the two of them, they managed to piece together a picture of who this guy really was. A serial scammer who preyed on women he met online. His MO was always the same. Charm his way into their lives, steal their financial information while they weren't looking, and then disappear before they realized what had happened. The more they uncovered, the angrier Sarah became. How many other women had he done this to? How many others hadn't even realized it yet? She filed a police report and contacted her banks, but the process was slow and frustrating. She got her cards canceled and started the long, tedious task of disputing the charges, but the emotional toll was harder to shake. "I felt violated," she told me. "Not just because he stole from me, but because I let him into my home. I trusted him enough to fall asleep next to him, and he used that trust to screw me over." Even now, Sarah says the experience has changed the way she approaches dating. She doesn't trust easily anymore, and she's hyper-aware of who she lets into her space. She double-checks her locks, keeps her wallet out of sight, and never leaves a stranger alone in her apartment. It's exhausting, she admits, but it's the only way she feels safe. The story stuck with me for days after she told me. It wasn't just about a bad date, it was a reminder of how easily we can fall victim to someone who knows exactly how to exploit our vulnerabilities. In the age of dating apps, where we swipe through potential matches like we're ordering from a menu, it's easy to forget that not everyone is who they claim to be. Sarah's story is a cautionary tale, one I share with people whenever the topic of online dating comes up. Not because I want to scare them, but because I want them to be careful, to trust their instincts, to remember that even the most charming stranger can have a darker side. So the next time you match with someone who seems too good to be true, take a moment to think about Sarah. And maybe, just maybe, keep your wallet locked away. I matched with this insanely attractive girl on Tinder, seriously way out of my league. She had this sultry look in her photos, the kind that makes you wonder if she even needs to be on a dating app at all. Her bio was short but intriguing, something about loving a little danger and late-night drives. It was the kind of profile that makes your heart race as you swipe right, hoping against hope she'll swipe right too. And then she did. We started chatting, and I couldn't believe how easy it was. She was flirty right off the bat, no awkward small talk or "what do you do for work" nonsense. It was like she had read my mind and knew exactly how to keep me hooked. Within hours, the conversation turned steamy, texts that would make your phone overheat, if you know what I mean. It was bold, direct, and exactly the kind of adrenaline rush I didn't know I needed. By the end of the day, we were sexting. Not just a little playful innuendo, but full-on, no-holds-barred, X-rated stuff. She was imaginative, confident, and every word she typed made my heart pound a little harder. I remember sitting there, grinning like an idiot, thinking, this is it. This is what people dream about when they join these apps. Then she hit me with something unexpected. "You're fun," she texted. "I have to tell you something, though. Don't freak out." I froze for a second. 1,000 scenarios ran through my head. Was she about to say she had a boyfriend? That she wasn't really single? That she lived halfway across the country? Whatever it was, I figured I could roll with it. I mean, we were having fun, and I was already hooked. What is it? I replied, trying to sound as casual as possible. There was a pause. 3 dots danced on the screen for what felt like forever before her next message popped up. I'm actually a guy. LOL. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My brain short-circuited. I stared at my phone, half expecting her to follow up with a just kidding or some kind of explanation. But nothing came. Just silence. It was like my world tilted sideways for a moment. Here I was, completely caught up in this wild, flirty exchange, only to find out it had all been some kind of twisted joke. My cheeks burned with embarrassment. My heart raced for a completely different reason now. The confidence I'd been feeling all day, gone, completely obliterated. My initial reaction was a mix of anger and humiliation. I felt played, like I'd been dragged into some weird prank for someone else's amusement. But then, as I reread the message, another feeling started to creep in, defiance. Joke's on you, I typed back. I'm bi. I hit send, and for a moment, I just stared at the screen, waiting to see what would happen next. Would he keep the joke going? Try to backpedal? Apologize? I wasn't sure what I wanted. Maybe a little validation that I hadn't completely wasted my time. Maybe just a way to salvage my pride. Instead, the guy unmatched me. Just like that, the chat disappeared, taking all the steamy messages and the bizarre twist with it. It was like it had never happened, except for the lingering mix of emotions swirling in my chest. Anger, confusion, a tiny bit of amusement, all rolled into one. I sat there, staring at the blank Tinder screen, trying to process what the hell had just happened. I should have been furious. And don't get me wrong, part of me definitely was. No one likes being tricked or humiliated, especially not in such a personal way. But at the same time, I couldn't help but laugh. The sheer absurdity of it all was too much. I'd gone from thinking I was living out some kind of fantasy to being the punchline of a random dude's trolling escapade. The thing is, the more I thought about it, the less it bothered me. Sure, it was a weird experience, and yeah, I felt a little dumb for falling for it. It started like every other hopeful swipe through the dating app. His profile seemed normal, attractive enough, witty, with a bio that read like he had both a sense of humor and a steady job. I wasn't expecting fireworks or a soulmate. I just wanted a pleasant evening out with someone who wouldn't make me regret shaving my legs. What I got was something so bizarre, so mortifying, that even years later, the memory still makes me cringe. The horror began the moment he sent me the location for our date. Great little Italian place, he texted. Perfect, I thought. Italian food is romantic and safe. Who doesn't love pasta? But then he added, oh, and I hope you don't mind, my mom's tagging along. At first, I thought he was joking. His mom? Surely, this was some sort of millennial humor I didn't understand. But no, he quickly clarified, yeah, we're a package deal. She'll be there with her OkCupid date. It'll be fun. Fun. That was the word he used. Fun. As if this was some quirky sitcom setup and not the giant red flag it clearly was. I should have bailed right then and there. I should have ghosted him, blocked his number, and deleted the app entirely. But against my better judgment, and probably because I'd already picked out an outfit, I decided to go. I told myself it couldn't possibly be as bad as it sounded. Oh, how wrong I was. I arrived at the restaurant a few minutes early, hoping to calm my nerves with a glass of wine before the weirdness began. But there they were, already seated at a booth in the back, waving me over like this was some sort of family reunion. Him, his mom, and a middle-aged man who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Hey, he said, standing up to greet me. His enthusiasm was unsettling. He hugged me as if we were old friends, and then, with no warning, introduced his mom. This is Carol, my mom, he said proudly, as if I were meeting the Queen of England. She stood and pulled me into an equally enthusiastic hug. And this, she said, gesturing to the man sitting awkwardly beside her, is Gary. We met online last week. Isn't he great? I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Gary barely made eye contact, mumbling something about how nice it was to meet me. He looked like he was mentally plotting his escape, and for a moment, I envied him. At least he had the excuse of being Carol's date. I, on the other hand, had willingly walked into this nightmare. Let's sit down, my date said cheerfully, oblivious to the absolute chaos he'd orchestrated. I slid into the booth, squished awkwardly between him and the wall, while his mom and Gary sat across from us. The waiter came by to take drink orders, and before I could even glance at the menu, Carol announced that we should all do tequila shots to break the ice. I wanted to crawl under the table. Gary looked like he wanted to too, but my date was all in. "Great idea, Mom," he said, high-fiving her like this was spring break in Cancun. I reluctantly ordered a glass of wine, hoping it would take the edge off whatever fresh hell was unfolding before me. The conversation started innocently enough, though Carol dominated it entirely. She talked about her job, her dog, her latest trip to Sedona, and how spiritual the energy there was. Gary nodded along dutifully, clearly uninterested but too polite to interrupt. My date, meanwhile, chimed in with random anecdotes about his childhood, as if his mom needed any reminders of the time he broke his arm trying to skateboard off the roof. I tried to steer the conversation towards something normal, hobbies, movies, anything that didn't involve family dynamics, but it was like shouting into the void. Every time I asked my date a question, Carol would jump in with her own answer. "He loves hiking," she said at one point, cutting him off mid-sentence. "But he's terrible at it. Remember when you got lost on Camelback Mountain? We had to send a search party." He laughed like it was the funniest thing he'd ever heard. I forced a polite smile, trying to figure out how quickly I could eat my meal and leave without seeming rude. Then came the food. Or more accurately, the food fight. Carol decided it would be cute to feed Gary a bite of her spaghetti, but he flinched, and the fork ended up poking him in the chin. Sauce splattered everywhere, and instead of apologizing, she burst out laughing, dabbing at his face with her napkin like he was a toddler who'd made a mess. "Isn't he adorable?" she cooed, while Gary stared blankly at his plate, his soul visibly leaving his body. By this point, I was seriously considering faking a phone call or claiming I had an early morning meeting. But my date seemed completely unfazed by the absurdity of it all. "This is going great, isn't it?" he whispered to me, leaning in like we were sharing some intimate moment. I stared at him, wondering if he was actually delusional or just painfully unaware of social norms. Things took a turn for the truly unbearable when Carol decided it was time for karaoke. Yes, karaoke. In the middle of a crowded Italian restaurant with no actual karaoke setup. She stood up, grabbed a spoon as a makeshift microphone, and launched into an off-key rendition of Don't Stop Believin'. Gary tried to stop her, but she was unstoppable. My date clapped along enthusiastically, as if this was the peak of entertainment. I was mortified. People were staring. The waiter looked like he wanted to intervene, but wasn't sure how to approach a woman belting out Journey lyrics over plates of fettuccine. I prayed for the ground to open up and swallow me whole. Finally, mercifully, the check arrived. Carol insisted on paying, declaring that it was her treat since she'd had such a fabulous time. Gary mumbled something about needing to use the restroom and never came back. I envied his bravery. As we walked out of the restaurant, my date turned to me beaming. "So," he said, "when can I see you again?" I blinked at him, unsure whether to laugh or scream. "You're joking, right?" I said, unable to hide my incredulity. He looked genuinely confused. "What do you mean?" "Tonight was amazing." "Amazing." That was the word he used. "Amazing." I managed a polite smile, mumbled something about being busy, and practically sprinted to my car. The moment I got home, I deleted his number, blocked him on the dating app, and poured myself a very large glass of wine. There was no way I was ever putting myself through something like that again. A first date is supposed to be about getting to know someone, not surviving a double date with their mom and her OkCupid disaster. Looking back, I still can't believe I didn't run the second he mentioned Carol. It's become one of those stories I tell at parties, the kind that makes everyone gasp and laugh in disbelief. But at the time, it was pure, unfiltered horror. His profile hadn't exactly wowed me, but he seemed nice enough in our messages, decent, funny in a mildly awkward way, and insistent that we should meet in person because chemistry is better face to face. Against my better judgment, I agreed. Maybe I was too cynical, I thought. Maybe this could be a surprise, the kind of date that blossoms into something when you least expect it. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. When I arrived at the bar, he was already there. Not just sitting, but halfway through his second pitcher of beer. That should have been my first clue to bail, but he didn't seem drunk. In fact, he seemed completely sober, which only made the sheer amount of alcohol in front of him more unnerving. He stood to greet me, flashed an awkward smile, and offered a clumsy compliment about my outfit. Something about him felt off, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. We started talking, and at first, it wasn't awful. He was polite, engaged, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. But the more we talked, the clearer it became that we had absolutely nothing in common. His stories felt flat, his jokes didn't land, and every time I tried to steer the conversation towards something more interesting, it fizzled out like a dud firecracker. Still, I stuck it out, telling myself not to judge too quickly. Then came the turning point. I was ready to wrap up the evening. He wasn't rude or offensive, just not my type. But when I mentioned heading out, he practically begged me to stay. "Come on, let's hit one more bar." "Just one drink," he said, his tone teetering on desperate. I hesitated. It was only 8 p.m., and the thought of cutting the night short made me feel unreasonably guilty. Against my instincts, I agreed. The next bar was smaller, darker, and more crowded. We found 2 seats at the bar, squeezed between a boisterous group of friends and a couple who were practically swallowing each other whole. I could feel his eyes on me as I ordered a drink, but it wasn't the kind of gaze that makes you feel flattered. It was intense, calculating, like he was trying to read something beneath the surface. As the couple next to us continued their public display of affection, he leaned in close and asked, "What do you think people here would do if we started making out?" I froze. My gut reaction was to laugh it off, make some joke to defuse the tension. "Probably nothing," I said. "People are too busy with their own drama." But he wasn't joking. His expression didn't shift, and his eyes didn't leave mine. "We should try it," he said. I let out a nervous laugh, trying to maintain some semblance of control. "I don't think that's a great idea," I said, keeping my tone light. "Not really my thing." I excused myself to the restroom, needing a moment to regroup and figure out how to exit this increasingly uncomfortable situation. When I returned, he had ordered a shot for me. Just one shot, none for himself. He slid it across the bar with a wide grin, insisting I drink it. "It's on me," he said, his voice oozing with false charm. "I'm good, thanks," I replied, trying to sound polite but firm. His demeanor shifted instantly. The grin vanished, replaced by a sharp edge of irritation. "Come on," he snapped. "It's just one shot." "No, really." "I'm fine," I repeated. His jaw tightened, and he let out a frustrated sigh before muttering, "Whatever. I'm ready to go." By that point, I was more than ready to leave too. But something about his behavior stuck with me. The man had consumed 2 pitchers of beer for margaritas and 2 pints of beer, and yet he displayed zero signs of intoxication. Not a single stumble, slur, or lapse in coordination. The sheer volume of alcohol alone was staggering, but the way he carried himself made it even more unsettling. As we walked outside, I hesitated. "Are you sure you're okay to drive?" I asked, genuinely concerned. He whipped his head toward me, his expression darkening. "I'm fine," he snapped, his voice dripping with defensiveness. "I can handle my liquor." Without waiting for a response, he stalked off in the opposite direction, disappearing into the night. When I got home, the evening still gnawed at me. Despite how bizarre and uncomfortable it had been, a part of me couldn't shake the worry that something might happen to him on the road. Maybe it was foolish, but I decided to text him, just to make sure he got home safely. His response came quickly, and it hit me like a slap in the face. "I only date girls I fuck on the first date." I stared at my phone, my mind racing between shock, anger, and disgust. The sheer audacity of that message, after everything else he'd said and done, left me speechless. Any lingering guilt or concern I'd felt evaporated instantly. He wasn't just a bad date, he was a walking red flag factory, churning out warning signs faster than I could process them. Looking back, I realize how many moments I ignored my instincts. The way he guzzled beer without showing any effects. The forced charm. The uncomfortable questions and the single, suspiciously targeted shot. It all screamed trouble, but I brushed it off, telling myself I was overreacting. I wasn't. That night taught me a valuable lesson about trusting my gut. Sometimes we ignore the warning signs because we want to believe the best in people. We convince ourselves to stay a little longer, give someone another chance, even when every fiber of our being is telling us to leave. But not everyone deserves that chance. Some people are exactly who they show you they are, right from the start. Dodging that bullet wasn't just luck, it was a wake-up call. And trust me, I'm listening now. I wasn't looking for anything serious, just a nice distraction, maybe a fun conversation over drinks. I'd matched with this guy on Tinder a few days earlier. He was older, 43, but that didn't bother me. His profile gave off the kind of energy that suggested he was confident, but not cocky, someone who might actually have their life together. He was funny, complimentary in our messages, and seemed genuinely excited to meet me. Against my better judgment, I decided to take a chance. We agreed to meet around 3 p.m., the safe territory of daylight. When I arrived, he was already waiting outside, smiling and waving like we'd known each other forever. His energy was infectious. He cracked a joke right away, and I found myself laughing, my nerves starting to ease. The first hitch came almost immediately. The restaurant we planned to visit had a line snaking out the door. He shrugged it off and suggested we go somewhere nearby, a charming spot on the water he claimed to love. Perfect for a first date, he said, flashing me a grin that felt disarming. I agreed, not realizing then just how wrong he was. The place was beautiful, umbrellas shading tables overlooking the harbor, sunlight glinting off the waves. I thought, maybe this won't be so bad. We grabbed a table, ordered drinks, and started talking. He was funny, I'll give him that. Witty enough to keep the conversation flowing, complimentary enough to make me feel flattered, but not overwhelmed. He seemed like he had it all together, until the Mai Tais arrived. I ordered one, just to be polite, but he immediately went for two. They're my favorite, he said, raising his glass in a toast. You haven't lived until you've tried a real Mai Tai. He wasn't kidding about their strength. Halfway through mine, I could feel the alcohol creeping up on me. I wasn't drunk, but I was definitely tipsy, maybe even bordering on drunk if I'd finished the whole thing. Meanwhile, he polished off his first Mai Tai like it was water and waved down the bartender for a second. By the time I finished my drink, he was already on his third. It wasn't long before his demeanor started to change. What had been light-hearted and charming turned intense. He leaned across the table, eyes locked on mine, and said, "You're amazing, you know that? I think I'm falling in love with you." I laughed, assuming he was joking. "We just met," I said, trying to keep things light. "No, I'm serious," he said, his voice low but firm. "You're everything I've been looking for." The words felt like a slap. I didn't know how to respond. It was way too much, too soon. I tried to steer the conversation back to something neutral, but he kept circling back to the same theme. How perfect I was, how he couldn't believe he'd found me, how he thought this might be fate. By the time we left the restaurant, he was visibly drunk. Not stumbling, but there was a glassy look in his eyes, and his words slurred just enough to make me uneasy. As we walked along the street, he suddenly stopped, turned to me, and said, "Marry me." I froze. "What?" "Marry me," he repeated, dead serious. "Why wait? When you know. I tried to laugh it off. "Maybe we take it slow. We did just meet each other." But he didn't laugh. His face darkened, and his whole body tensed. "Take it slow," he snapped. "What does that even mean? I thought you felt the same way." I mean, I like you, but we've only known each other for a couple of hours." He didn't respond. Instead, he stormed off, leaving me standing on a street corner, stunned. I watched as he disappeared into the crowd, my heart pounding with a mix of relief and disbelief. Part of me wanted to call him back just to make sure he wasn't about to wander into traffic, but the bigger part of me knew I needed to cut ties, and fast. I stood there for a minute, trying to process what had just happened. This guy had gone from charming to overbearing to downright hostile in the span of 2 hours. I felt like I'd been on a roller coaster I never wanted to board in the first place. By the time I got home, I thought I was done with him. I'd made up my mind to block his number and move on. But then the text started. "Come over. I miss you." It was 5 p.m. The date had only ended an hour ago, and this man, this 43-year-old man, was texting me like a lovesick teenager. Each message felt more unhinged than the last. I didn't respond, but they kept coming, a relentless barrage of desperation that made my skin crawl. I sat there, staring at my phone, wondering how I'd managed to end up in this situation. It wasn't just the absurdity of his behavior, it was the way he had seemed so normal at first. So charming, so composed. And then, like a switch had flipped, he became someone else entirely. Someone I didn't recognize. Someone I didn't want to be anywhere near. Looking back, I can see all the red flags I ignored. The way he slammed down drinks without hesitation. The way he insisted on a third Mai Tai, even though the bar had a 2-drink limit. The way his compliments felt just a little too intense, a little too rehearsed. But at the time, I brushed them off, telling myself I was overreacting.